My name is Dana Wilson. I am the Work-Based Learning Section Professional Development Committee Chair. Today we'll be speaking with a group of panelists on best practices for informing policy related to work-based learning and CTE. As always, we are sponsored by Transio, and Transio has a video to describe their services. We'll watch that now.
Hi everyone, my name is David Peak and I'm with Transio, one of this webinar's co-sponsors. We're delighted you were able to join us today, and a big thank you to each of our panelists. For those of you who aren't familiar with Transio, well, we're a suite of student readiness tools that streamlines the entire student journey, from work-based learning initiatives and tracking graduation requirements to supporting career pathways and Perkins 5 reporting. Our custom configurable software not only generates the data that educators need, but creates visual, actionable reporting. Transio takes the manual heavy lifting off of educators and replaces that with automated digital processes, so they can spend more time focusing on their students. Our contact information will be shared if you'd like to talk. Otherwise, please enjoy the webinar.
There you go. Thank you so much, Transio. So for today's panel, we'll be hearing from Stephen Casa, Workplace Learning Coordinator at Ulster BOCES, Cheryl Carrier, Executive Director for Ford Next Generation of Learning, Johnny Ann Hansen, Vice President of Operations for the Council of Industry, and Aaron Bebo, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for CityWorks DC. And with that, we'll have Stephen get us started.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Stephen Casa. I'm the Workplace Learning Coordinator at Ulster BOCES, and I am the Advocacy Committee Chair for ACT's Work-Based Learning Section. So happy that you're with us. I'm actually very glad that you're going to spend a little time with us. We're going to try to make this the most exciting and fun hour of your day, if that's at all possible. If you can do that via Zoom, myself, Cheryl, Aaron, and Johnny are going to do everything we can to make this be extremely exciting and hopefully something that you'll get stuff from that you'll actually put to use. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So I'm very, very grateful and fortunate to have Cheryl, Aaron, and Johnny Ann with me for this webinar. These are amazing people that I've had the great luck of working with in the past and currently. We've done some great work together around advocacy, around engagement leading to advocacy, and we're going to try our hardest to make sure that you guys get some tools that you can take with you. So the agenda, really quickly, we're going to go over the what, which is an introduction to advocacy. We'll talk about the definition of what it is, and we'll talk about various levels. I think that hopefully you'll get something out of that. We're going to talk about the why, right, and the role of engagement. So from our perspective, we believe that engagement is a really critical part of advocacy. We'll go into a little bit more detail. Then we're going to talk about the how. Each of my colleagues here, Johnny Ann, Aaron, and Cheryl, are going to talk a little bit about what they do in their organizations around this work, around engagement and advocacy, and how it's beneficial for schools, for communities, for kids, for parents, for everyone, for all stakeholders. Then what we're going to do is we're going to actually go into some breakout rooms. We're going to, a lot of times when we go to these webinars, right?
We are late for some reason or another.
Hi.
How do we get to
Everybody
be so
could mute
late?
themselves. That'd be really awesome. Thank you. Really appreciate your muting. We're going to go into breakout rooms because a lot of these webinars, like folks, we kind of sit here and we just listen to folks talk, right? What we want to do is we want to have you go in with the experts, right? Or leaders in this work. Johnny and Aaron and Cheryl will have 3 different breakout rooms. We're going to organize them by demographics, right? Because while the work is similar, the demographics do matter in this work. And you'll be able to ask questions. You'll be able to talk, bring up, any points that you heard from them and dig a little bit deeper. That's the time when you could dig deeper, right? We're going to probably spend about 15, 20 minutes, hopefully, maybe even more if we get through some stuff. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring you back, okay? We're going to bring you back into the main room, and we're going to have discuss takeaways, and we're going to really talk to you all about what you're going to commit to trying. Look, we all know that we all participate in so many different professional developments where there are tremendous ideas, right? Ideas are nothing unless you try, right? So what we want to do is we want to try to bring that home and have you guys talk a little bit about what you're going to try. So if you could, Dana, if you could, thanks. So what we're going to do is we're going to poll you. We're going to have 2 polls here. The first question, the first poll is going to, we want to know who you are, okay? And we want to know based on the time that you've done this work, right? How many years of experience do you have doing this work? Okay, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 plus. And then the second poll question will be which demographic category best represents your community, okay? Large urban, small city, suburban, and rural. So if you wouldn't mind, Laura, launching that first poll question, it would be really great. And so folks, you can just click on one of these choices, and then we'll give it about a minute and we'll check out the answers. All right, Laura, how are we doing with our answers on this one?
You should be able to see the results now.
Terrific, thank you. Okay, just to let you know, I took the poll. My answer is 11 plus years. I've been doing this for a long time. I had hair when I started doing this, but that's how it goes, you know. Okay, so we have 63% of 1 to 5 years. So, you know, this should be a very valuable workshop session for you all. So only 6% between 6 and 10 years. Hopefully you'll get some stuff out of this. And our 31% 11 plus years, hopefully what you'll hear from us will align with what you do. And hopefully you'll gain some knowledge from this also, but you also might be helpful in those breakout rooms if Cheryl, Johnny, and Erin need some support with that stuff. So thank you so much for taking this poll. We appreciate that. And if we can close this one and go on to the second question, please. Which demographic category best represents your community? Is it a large urban community? Is it a small city? Is it suburban? Is it rural? If we can check those off, it would be grateful. We'd be grateful. And we'll give you guys about a minute. We were going to play some music for the background of these polls, but nobody liked my selection. So, you know, this is how it goes. You can't make everybody happy. So. All right, Laura, why don't we show our results? Oh, wow. This is great. 21% large urban, 18% small city, and 36 and 24% suburban and rural. Wow. Okay, great. So hopefully we're going to be able to cover all the bases for you. Okay. And when you go into your breakout rooms, please make sure that you select based on your community, the type of community that you're in, which we saw from this poll. So if we move on to the next slide, appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about advocacy, okay? And the what of advocacy. So definition, right, is it's public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy, right? It's about getting behind something, okay? It's about getting behind something and trying to make something happen with it, all right? And when we talk about advocacy, there's different levels of advocacy, and with that comes the outcomes, right? The things that you're going to be able to get done. So if you look at this little graphic here, you know, I've been talking about this for years, and the truth is in this graphic. And if there's anybody who disagrees with me, bring it on, okay? Because the fact of the matter is, when we look at advocacy, we look at it, if we look at it from 3 perspectives, individual, organizational, institutional, what we're going to see is we're going to see the different levels of impact that this advocacy can have. So on the individual side, it's one person. You know, it's Steve Casa who cares a lot about bluebird boxes in the Hudson Valley, okay? And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try really hard to get as many people in the Hudson Valley to put up some bluebird boxes, okay? Well, you know what? I might not have that much success. Maybe my neighbors who trust me and respect me and know me, they might do it, right? Because they want bluebirds and such. So, you know, the reality is with individual advocacy, it's really based on one person, right? That person and their belief, right? And it's transactional. It's not sustainable, right? If you think about this, if you have one person that you're working with that's a believer in your cause and they leave, guess how many people you have working with you, right? To believe in your cause, right? So there's not a lot of legs to this, right? It is transactional. Organizational advocacy takes it to the next level. It's when you get more people in an organization engaged and involved, right? This is where a whole organization can really jump on the bandwagon for something that you're trying to bring forward. Okay, there are better levels. Oh, by the way, it's important, right? Individual advocacy in an organization can lead to organizational advocacy. And that's all dependent on how good that individual is at selling, right, that idea to the organization, right? And we also recognize that there's some layers to this, right? If you get the leaders to be individual advocates, to be champions, oftentimes you're going to you have a little bit more play with respect to organizational advocacy, and there's more resources there, right? And these are transactional for sure, okay? But the thing is, that there is some sustainability with this, right? Most organizations don't go away. So if you're able to work an organization and create advocacy in that organization.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, thank you for muting. We appreciate it so much. Thank you. So if you can work that, then what you're going to be able to do is you might be able to get some sustainability around the cause and around the thing that you're looking to bring forward. But the next one is the real biggie, institutional advocacy. This is where it all really happens. And this is a whole community that's going to be involved in this, right? This is when whatever this cause is, it's expected in the community, right? So what that does, and this becomes sustainable and very strategic because this will overcome succession problems, right? So a quick example, I remember we were doing some work in a school district and we were fortunate enough to go, through individual, then organizational, then institutional advocacy in this whole school district, this community. And it was incredible to see because of the expectation of the program in that community, because of the benefits of the program, how much influence, right? Or how much that advocacy was able to inform decisions, right? And those decisions were important, right? I mean, when you have an initiative and you dig deep and you do this work and you're having success, what you want to make sure is that's sustainable, right? So bringing stuff to scale, making it sustainable, those are really the keys. So the 3 levels of advocacy are key, right? And I hope you can take something away from this. If you have somebody that believes in your work or an initiative that you're bringing forward, that's great. But what you need to do is you need to work with them to try to get them to bring it up to their entire organization, okay? And then what you need to do is you need to try to get multiple organizations to believe in this work to create an institutional model in your community. Does this make sense? If it does, please just give a thumbs up in the reactions thing or in your video or whatever, okay? Look, if my friend Cheryl says that it makes sense and I get a thumbs up from her, I'm feeling all right about this. So, okay, so that's where we're at with respect to advocacy. But what we want to do is we want to talk about what's going to get you there, okay? So if you wouldn't mind, Dana, moving on to the next slide. Okay. So in order to create an advocacy model, you have to have engagement, right? And that engagement is really centered around stakeholders and partners. Now, look, we're talking about CT here. We're talking about this from a school or a district or an LEA perspective, right? And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to build out opportunities to get more circumstances that are going to help our kids, help our programs, help us, right? Help make this stuff happen, right? And the way you do it is you create engagement. You have to identify partners, right, that are going to be able to really, really buy in and have influence, right? Because if you look at this graphic, right, and I found this graphic, I thought it was fantastic. Actually, it's from a paper by Olga Berlinski on aligned pathways And I'm going to check out the whole paper. It's fantastic, and just glancing at it. But I found this graphic, and I thought it was fantastic because this whole idea of transactional strategic, right? The one-off basic engagement, digging into really deep system changing engagement, right? Changing the system, right? Having tremendous impact. If you look at the graphic, it really helps. We look at the programmatic aspects, right? Level 1, let's just fix stuff, okay? Let's plug in some gaps, right? We'll get a couple of things going here, right? It's transactional. We might get somebody to donate stuff. There might be some in-kind donations for your career and tech center, et cetera. Level 2 is individual impact. So you're going to start to dig in, you're going to get more people involved, right? And you can see how this links back to individual advocacy also, right? And then on the advocacy side, this is transactional, right? The business partner, the business itself, corporate citizens, they're engaged, they help out, right? But what we want to do is we want to get it to if we want to really have change, we need it to be strategic, right? We need to create system change and changing the game, right? We have to be able to roll up this continuum and get more engagement and more involvement. And this is where we roll up. If we roll up into institutional advocacy and strategic partner engagement, we're going to be seeing those opportunities for systemic change. We'll see more apprenticeships, more different, different things, different levels of support. And then the game changers where, we're changing lives now, right? This work is literally changing lives. And if you look at it with the strategic place, the business becomes the expert and they become your partner, okay? If you think about this from a perspective. I'm going to talk to you about a very quick example, okay? I'm in Ulster County, New York. How many people, right, by a show of hands, right, or a thing, know where Ulster County is? Does anybody? Johnny Ann, you don't know where Ulster County is? Come on, you're in Ulster County with me. Okay.
I was just trying to find my reaction.
So really quickly, Erin Bieber, you know where Ulster County is, because if I'm not mistaken, I think you grew up across the river from us, right? Yes, you did. So Ulster County is about 90 miles north of New York City. The center of Ulster County is about 90 miles north of New York City, up the New York State Thruway. We have one small city, Kingston, New York, which is interestingly, okay, is the first capital of New York State. The capital of New York State, first capital. And it's actually the city in the United States that had the largest percentage home price gain during the pandemic. Everybody wanted to move to Kingston, right? So it's created some opportunities. Well, you know what? I work in a career and tech center and we have a really great internship program, but the only people that can participate in the internship program are kids that have means to get transportation, right? So we have a whole bunch of kids who are not getting opportunities. So what we did is based on creating, a really, really good partner engagement and advocacy model. We were able to work through one of my main business partners to get a meeting with the county executive. And we're in the process right now of trying to solve this problem of transportation to get internships, to get young people who don't have means, the ability to be able to get to their jobs. That's massive. That's a game changer for kids, right? This is an equity project, right? And if you think about it, the whole logic comes from an idea, right? We got these kids that don't have, right? Well, this is the potential solution. And these are the people we need to help us get to that potential solution, right? And I'll keep you guys posted on this, but I know for a fact that that this is something that's going to, of course, we got to deal with all the legal stuff at the schools, but we'll get through that. But that's an example of how this works. And you can see it on this chart. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And in this point, what we're going to do is we're going to have our friends talk a little bit about their work. Okay, and I'm just going to check out the chat really quickly. Christine, you want to know a little bit more about the transportation thing? I'll tell you, it does apply everywhere. Maybe we're going to have to do another webinar on this. But what I want to try to do is give folks an opportunity to talk about this. And if we have some time at the end, I'll get specifically down with the transportation thing. And of course, you guys can reach out to me, my email address. I'm happy to do a Zoom with you, happy to talk about how we made this happen, or we're trying to make it happen, actually. So let's shut me up, shut that guy up, please. Let's have our friends from the Council of Industry, from CityWorks and Ford Next Generation Learning, NGL, talk to us a little bit about this. So Johnny Ann Hanson, you're the Vice President of Operations at the Council of Industry. Folks on this call don't know it, but you and I go back a long way to your high school days.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute, hasn't it? And actually a college course that I actually had the pleasure of being your instructor. So Johnny Ann, why don't you talk a little bit about the Council of Industry and how we do things? Johnny Ann is here with me in the Hudson Valley, right? Why don't you talk a little bit about how the council works with schools, works with communities to build out some of the initiatives that really, really matter with respect to workforce development?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. So the Council of Industry is a manufacturers association, and we represent about 150 companies in the Hudson Valley who are all facing the same challenges as you would imagine. And from a workforce perspective, in terms of outreach and engagement, we kind of start at the ground level and work the life cycle of workforce, whether it's incumbent workers or pre-apprentices and things like that. So some of the things we're most proud of that I think might be most relevant to our audience today, we act as an industry partner with the Hudson Valley Pathways Academy, as you had mentioned, and the PTech program. We partner with all of our local BOCES programs, our high schools, whoever really is available and interested in engaging with us. We have a pre-apprentice program and we work with those partners. We have an apprentice program that is directly through the Department of Labor. So we have the ability to partner with that. So in terms of like what we're doing actively sort of on the field and in the weeds a little bit, those are some of our partners. I know you had mentioned, Steve, a little bit about the obstacles. I would just add that, you know, we clearly face the same obstacles, right? Some of it is geography. In my case, being somebody who's, you know, in HR for a number of years, but in workforce development for a small handful of years, you get a little bit of the same old perceptions, maybe a not as open-mindedness to trying things differently. On the other hand, we get all the people who are. You mentioned transportation. We also find that to be an obstacle. As a regional association, we find that, you know, different pockets of our own region, and we're just, you know, a handful of counties here in the Hudson Valley, but the needs are different across these counties. And it's important for us from an outreach perspective, from an engagement perspective, to realize that no one shoe fits everybody's needs. So the audience might be a little bit different. And we have to have, you know, some of those conversations based on where people are to begin with. And, you know, just to move ahead a little bit in terms of how we do it, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm fortunate enough to kind of come in on someone else's 30-year tenure of planting seeds, right? But the reality in my world is we need to find first, because we work through industry, the industry partners, they're the future employers of these individuals. They have, for lack of a better word, a bit of a louder voice. And if you find the right champion with the right message saying, hey, we are going to hire these people, we will employ them, we will, you know, retain them to the area. You know, when we start, you know, taking that individual to company to institutional, when we start going down that path, having industry partners makes a bit of a difference. And that's something we've been really fortunate to do, is to engage industry, individuals, companies, institutions, and start that seed a little bit small and continue to grow that. I would also say that something I think that we do well is listen first. So we as an association aren't coming with all the solutions. We are coming with the questions. We are wanting to hear. And that matters when we're talking to industry. And it also matters when we get to the advocacy side too. So, you know, we're not just trying to take our square peg and push it through anyone and anywhere. We're trying to hear where that is. So I fundamentally believe that in order to inform, it's our duty and role to first be informed, to listen, to ask the questions, to build that momentum from that smaller seed, and as that grows to becoming what we eventually will call advocacy, but the engagement that's necessary. So I think something that we do in our area well is respect the audience, come where they are, ask the questions, see what their priorities are, whether that's a superintendent, whether that's a CEO, whether that's an elected official, what are the priorities they're currently working on, and how does our mission for the workforce align? What can we find that's in common, and how can we start there? I think we're all probably going to say something similar in terms of starting small in order to kind of get big. But I think a big piece of that is the willingness to listen and ask those questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Johnny Ann. Yeah, that's the key, right? Being able to develop the relationships, right? To be able to have those conversations. I love that you talked about champions. Right? The reality is those champions become your first individual advocates, then organizational advocates, and because they roll with the same people, it can become institutional from that place. So thank you very much.
In the chat, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but you might actually just want to answer this question. There's a question that says you're running into roadblocks with students being able to work at the companies as a result of OSHA or other obstacles. I know you personally are breaking through on some of these. I've also had some success I'm happy to share. I'll send you my email as well. But I don't know if you want to go ahead and answer that, or if you want to put it down for later.
Super duper quick. What I'm doing is I'm writing a note. So there are laws, there are US labor laws educating regarding the employment of minors, okay? And the reality is that I've had a lot of businesses say to me that I can't take anyone under the age of 18. However, very quickly, there is an exemption to that rule for students that are in technical training programs. So, and what I'll do is I'll when we're in the breakout rooms, I'll find that and I'll put that in the chat. I'll put those laws. So what I've been able to do is I've been able to actually bring those to business partners and say, hey, you know, this is allowed, this is okay. And the other side of it is this, I'm gonna be blunt honest with you. It's about relationships, right? I cultivate these relationships. They trust me because we do the outcomes. It's really critical. Johnny, and you want to add anything to that?
No, that's exactly what I would have said. And I think your relationship part is correct, because, you know, if they don't trust you as the intermediary, even if you say, here's this document that says, they're just like, I'm not even going to bother. I'm not willing to take that chance. Who are you? We're no way. So I think if you start with that, and, you know, perhaps, you know, dip your toe in and go from there. But I think your relationship point is accurate. Also, I just put my email in there. Happy to brainstorm with anyone.
Thanks, Johnny. And I want to respect time. Let's bring Erin in. Phenomenal, Johnny Ann. Thank you. Now you know why I asked you to do this. Everybody knows why I asked you to do this. You're terrific. Erin, please, if you could come off mute and talk a little bit about DC, the work that you did, that we did together, right? And the work that you did and what you're doing now.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erin Bebo. I'm Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at CityWorks DC. We are a nonprofit that is focused on ensuring that the district's youth of color are better prepared for, hired into, and succeeding in the high wage, high demand jobs that exist in the district and region. For about 10 years prior to that, I was leading college and career programs work at DC public schools, and as well as the college and career policy work at the district's state education agency. And played an important part in growing DC's career academies. I just got these numbers and they made me so joyful. We went from having 0 career academies in 2012 to, wait for it, I can't even believe I'm about to say this number, 47 less than 10 years later. Woo! Thank you, Cheryl, for your claps. I appreciate that. And then also in establishing what we call the Career Ready internship here in DC, which is pairing our CTE students with a rigorous paid internship in their area of study. That went from 0 in 2013 to now over 1,000 in a city where, you know, if you've been to DC in the summer, It's like it feels like every college student, grad student, and even adult professional comes in for their summer internship, and to have that number of our high school students competing against them, and filling those roles feels really great. And now there are even more investments in the mayor's most recent budget to expand that even further. You're going to have to bear with me because there's a little bit of like what I'm about to say. I won't say it repeats what Johnny Ann said, it amplifies. For context, and Steve can sort of nod or gesticulate as he is known to do. There were a lot of folks who were skeptical, might be a generous term, or even flat out against us pursuing some of these things, which now, just about 10 years later, feel so embedded into what secondary education is in DC. And so reflecting about sort of how we effectively engaged and advocated, there were sort of three big things that were really important for us to keep front of mind and sort of act on accordingly. One, to amplify Johnny Ann's point, is know our stakeholders and what and who matters most to them. There were many instances in which I could have said something until my face turned purple. And someone who is coming from a different angle, who mattered to our critical stakeholders, could say the exact same thing, and it would have had a wildly different outcome. And so knowing who are your stakeholders, what matters to them, and who do they care about it coming from is by far step number one. Two, then, and there are sub bullets to this one, so I'm cheating a little bit. Knowing that sort of who are your stakeholders, what and who matters most to them, being prepared with an engagement strategy that does sort of three things. And I'm going to put some resources that I'm about to refer to in the chat. Darn it, they don't look pretty. I can send them separately, or I have a colleague on here who can send them separately if this is too messy. Thanks, Zoe. Zoe's best. So first is highlighting the voices. So being prepared, when you're going into a room or when you're preparing, for your advocacy or engagement, having a strategy that highlights the voices of the constituents who matter most, right? The example I'll use for that is the City Works creative that is now in this first link. That is a strategy that we are employing in City Works to empower youth to be leaders, right? If you've ever been to a city council hearing, to Senate testimony, like, all of these adults in suits are and like what gets everybody to like look and take notes, it's when the students talk, it's when the youth talk, it's when those who are experiencing the education are speaking. They are by far the best advocates. They actually require almost no preparedness, and they really resonate. And so identifying who's comfortable in doing that, who is interested in doing that, giving them a little bit of coaching, and then go, right? In some cases, to Johnny Ann's point, that's the industry leaders, right? If you've got a mayor or a governor or a what have you who's really interested in economic growth, and that is sort of their priority, like who is a respected business leader, if they're really focused on revitalizing a certain section of your city or state or region, who are the constituents who are from that section of the city, state, or region, who you bring in. So 2A is highlighting the voices of the people that matter. The second is, and I pop it here in sort of this tenacity employability skills curriculum, which I'm like such a fan of, is really coming head on, addressing the barriers to yes that each stakeholder member that you're meeting with or trying to convince otherwise has. In this case, I am going to, yay, Hillary. So in this one, I think I'm thinking a lot about the businesses who we were really trying to get to say yes to. And they, whether they said it or not, always had 3 big things that they wanted me to tick off as I was sort of wooing them. One is, are you going to make me, right? No, you can interview the students for the Career Ready internship, like walk away anytime. Spoiler alert, they never did, because our students are so much better than everybody gives them credit for. The second was, are you going to pay for this? And so it was right out there. Yep, covering it paid. And then the third one, which ended up being one of the biggest, is how are they prepared for this? And I would just slide across the desk. This is when we met in person, my God. And I would slide across the desk the tenacity, employability skills curriculum, which is really like a huge barrier for getting a lot of the employers to say yes. And they would look at me and I would say, every intern that you're getting has gone through this entire curriculum as an elective or a boot camp. And they'd say, okay, I'm in, right? But having that there, not like with let me get back to you. And then part C is, 2C is, do you have data to back up everything that you're saying, right? And in the chat at 3:34, Zoe shared the early career outcomes brief that we invested in, which really lifts up the voice of youth who had completed their education in DC and who are reflecting back and saying, how prepared am I? How prepared was I for work? What mattered, what didn't? It's a super depressing report. The one big shining light was the students who had the opportunity to build what we call career assets, or what Bain calls career assets. They were the ones who were most likely to be employed, succeeding, earning a higher wage, and feeling good about where they were in the early career outcomes. Having reports like that on hand and say, hey, guess what builds early career outcomes? Based learning opportunities, career academies. That matters. And having that proactively versus reactively. Again, the third point, which is similar, is following up proactively with results, like relentlessly prove what is possible, measure it, and then send those results. Within, 2 years, I was able to submit to our city's leadership that our students in our career academies were outperforming their peers at a statistically significant level in enrollment, GPA, engagement, on track to graduation, and then down graduation, applying for college. And I had that. And then that became part of the city's sort of lexicon of like, okay, this is actually a good thing that works. Those are my 3. We'll talk more in the chat, and I will pass it on to Cheryl, who has so much to share with us.
First, I want to thank you, Erin. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And I think that one thing that I took from what you said, and this is really matters, is data, right? That you got to have, if you don't have the proof points, you're in trouble. Cheryl Carrier, my gosh, Ford NGL, one of my favorite people. Could you talk a little bit about what you guys do at Ford and how you engage with communities and that eventually leads to advocacy, please?
You bet. So Steve, thank you. And it's great to be here with Johnny Ann and Erin. I'm learning so much from you as well. So excuse me, just getting over some COVID. So a little cough every now and then. So I am the executive director for Ford Next Generation Learning, which is the program that has been designed, built by Ford Motor Company Fund, which is a philanthropic arm of Ford Motor Company. And Ford has been really engaged in education for a long time. And we got to a point, I could tell you a long, interesting story, but I'll shorten it up and say we got to a point where we realized that what we were doing wasn't scalable or sustainable. And in fact, very programmatic. And we had invested millions and millions of dollars over the years. So in the last 10 years, we decided that we really wanted to focus on how do you transform teaching and learning to be more relevant and authentic for students? How do you embed the academics in career tech education? Because we know that kids love to go to their CTE courses, right? But they struggle with their academic courses. And so we really got behind the Career Academy model because we felt as though it allowed students to explore, to better understand how they were going to use their academics, to build their social capital, make better decisions about their future. And as we got into this work, I saw something that also concerned me. There were great programs out there, but they weren't being offered to all students. And, you look at these academies and career pathways, and you got to ask, why aren't these for all students? I mean, they work for all students. And we know that, there's studies around that. So we decided we really wanted to sink our teeth into how do you bring the community around this, not as an afterthought, but in the beginning. And, we spent our life talking to educators about, how we can transform the system to allow all students to learn in this way, right? But we were leaving out, even in our past work, we were leaving out that employer piece. And so we have worked very carefully to design a process and a system to bring the larger community around the development of these career academies. We think of them as a transformational model. It's not programmatic the way we're approaching it. And I'll say more about that in a minute. But one of the ways that we had to go about it was to demonstrate and show that we were not only improving student outcomes, but we were improving workforce outcomes and community prosperity. And when you start to talk about, you get beyond the education, everybody knows that's important. Civic leaders, mayors, governors, employers, they all know this is important, nonprofits. But when they start to hear, oh, this is really going to solve our workforce issues as well, and economic development issues, and also build community prosperity, their ears perk up a bit more, right? So we really take an interesting approach to this because we bring the community together to really explore what this transformation looks like. And we take them out to see what it looks like so that they can actually experience it. And part of the process of doing this is finding a key stakeholder in a community that really understands this, that gets behind it and says, my gosh, why aren't we doing more of this, right? Excuse me, in Nashville, it was the chamber. They really got behind it and said, my gosh, we have to invest in these academies. Makes total sense. We want to go wall to wall. All 12,000 high school students need to be in these academies. So the chamber worked with us to convene major employers, nonprofits, a collective impact organization, teachers, the union, students, everybody that they could, they brought them to the table. Excuse me again, I'm so sorry. And we really take them through a very interesting consensus workshop process where they start to identify, what does a graduate look like when they come out of high school? What kinds of skills and dispositions and attitudes do they need? And all of a sudden, they become co-owners. And not only co-owners, but advocates for this work. And so through that process, we're constantly asking the community, who else needs to be at the table? Who else needs to be part of developing this plan? How do we get them involved? How do we show them the power of this and really engage them in this model? And what really excites, at least from my perspective, business and civic leaders, is that it is a transformation. It's not a program. It's scalable, it's sustainable. And it's scalable and sustainable because the community does become the co-owner of this. And they become the advocates. And they start to internally in their own organizations say, who are we going to put on this to make sure that we're driving it down into the organization so we can assist the schools, so we can align our resources, so we can activate, these opportunities to connect with these students in really meaningful ways. And so I know that I'm probably over here and we got to get to breakout rooms, but I just want to say that it is about bringing the community together and really demonstrating for them how it's going to improve all of these things. And they're in and they're in strong. So I'm complete. I'll stop there.
Cheryl, thank you so much. Everything that you said means so much, and I love how you talked about it going from, again, that transactional piece, right, to a strategic piece, right, to really, transformational, and the community gets involved. That's what we see the growth. Okay, wonderful. As you all know, we could talk about this forever. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into these breakout rooms. We're going to spend about 8 to 10 minutes in these breakout rooms. You're going to pick, okay? You're going to pick whether you want to go in and learn more about what Cheryl's doing in the regional city side, Erin from the large urban side, or Johnny Ann from the suburban rural side. So go in, join. I know there's not a ton of time. I wish there was more. There's never enough time. Never. So I'm going to shut up. We're going to go into these breakout rooms. We're going to bring you back, and we're going to close it with a little exercise, okay? So please, if you wouldn't mind launching the breakout rooms, Laura.
So folks, you should have the option now to select the breakout rooms button in your toolbar. And then from there, be able to select the room that you want to move to. You do need to hover over to the right next to the name and click the join button. Sometimes it might not show up as a button. It'll just highlight when you hover your mouse. If anyone is having difficulty joining a room, please let me know and I can assign you to the room that you want to join. Thank you.
Had a conversation. We're gonna talk about figuring out maybe there's a way to do some kind of follow-up to this, because I think that there's some conversations that really would like to be continued. Unfortunately, there's never enough time. Come on, we've been doing Cheryl, how many times did you guys go over with your conferences? Should it be 75 minutes? Should it be 60 minutes? You know what I mean? Like, come on, we've all lived in this world. So,
Well, we have emails, so anybody can reach out to us, right?
Yeah.
absolutely.
Way to do it.
It's always just the beginning of the conversation, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, I'm going to thank everybody. And again, sorry that, that there wasn't enough time. It would be great if we had another 15 minutes, but I don't know if you heard this, but we're going to talk with ACT, see if we can maybe do a follow-up to this. And if Cheryl, Johnny Ann, and Erin will agree to it, maybe we can, just have a half an hour, or 40 minutes of just digging in, in rooms. We'll figure it out. But what I want to do is I want to talk about this. This is the key thing, right? So you heard a lot of stuff today, right? Probably not enough. You could probably have heard more, but this is the really important piece, right? We go to these conferences, these workshops, we hear stuff. There's nothing without learning, right? So we got a Jamboard here. What I want you to do is, if you wouldn't mind clicking on the link for the Jamboard, right? And there are 2 slides in the Jamboard, okay? One is, what did I learn today? Just put in one little note, one little sticky note on what you learned. And then the second slide, you'll see up at the top, and click to the second slide. You'll see you can put in what you're going to commit to doing, all right? And if we wouldn't mind doing that, and I'm just going to tell you a very quick story, because I think it's important to hear this, right? So I was a very successful high school and college basketball coach. You wouldn't think, well, what's a short, 5'5" Italian guy? How could it be possible that he could be a really good basketball coach? Well, there are tons of us, right? Louis Carnesecca, Roland Massimino, Rick Pitino. I can go down the list, right? And Steve Casa, right? So, I used to have these parents come to me and say, coach, what basketball camp should I send my kid to, right? And they would always be perplexed when I would say to them, none. They would be like, what? These different things. And then they're going to go in the backyard and they're going to shoot from the same spot that they always make their shots from. They're going to dribble with their right hand. They're not going to do this stuff, right? So, I used to suggest AAU and other types of different things like that, right? Well, the bottom line is let's not make this basketball camp, friends, okay? You got some really good stuff today. I hope you did. It seems so. I'm seeing it right here. Take something with you and make a commitment to doing it, right? And if you're so bold, I would love my email box to be flooded with emails from you telling me, Steve, I took something from this thing and I did it and this is what happened, right? You know, this is really good work and it can have significant impact, right? On communities, on business partners, on schools, on teachers, on administrators, but most importantly, on young people. That's what we do this for, right? And when we create advocacy and we create engagement and we're not afraid to engage, what we do is we create circumstances and situations and conditions for young people to benefit. This has been something I've been doing my entire career, and I take no credit for the successes that I've had. It's all been because of the relationships that I've built, and kids win because of it. So I give you that passionate plea to please don't make this session be basketball camp. Take something from this thing. My cat just jumped when I hit the table. Take something from this thing and make something happen. Shoot me an email and let me know how it worked out. If you need anything, don't hesitate to email the three of us. Our email addresses are in the presentation. You'll get a follow-up with this recording. And I want to thank you all so very much to being a part of this thing today, and particularly to Cheryl, Johnny, and Erin, who are such pros, and to our friends at ACT, Laura and Dana, especially for driving and making this fantastic. You guys are awesome. Have a great day. Be safe. And yeah, we'll keep this open for people if you want to keep adding to the Jamboard. We'll keep it open for another couple of minutes. Thank you all. You're wonderful. You rock.
Wow, we have been well fed today, I would say, with some great information. So thank you again, Stephen and Cheryl and Johnny Ann and Erin, for sharing what you've done and committing us to do it, right? No basketball camps here. So I'm just gonna close with a couple of things. Dana will leave up here. Well, we'll share the slideshow with you, as well as other information. If Cheryl or Johnny Ann or Erin or Stephen have other documents that you think would be helpful to share out with the group when we share this recording, send those my way. Just a couple of things before we close. If you liked this one, make sure you keep joining us for our work-based learning webinars. We do them every month. So our next two, February 24th, March 24th, are coming up. More details for those will be coming out, and the link to register as it gets a little closer. And then if you haven't registered to attend our National Work-Based Learning Conference on April 28th and 29th in Utah, get registered, because we have over 40 sessions that are going to be amazing, just like this group that presented to us today. And you will leave with a lot of great information and resources. So join that as well. So with that said, we will let you go. We are past our time, and watch your inbox in the next week or so for the Work-Based Learning section newsletter, which will have all of these details and some links to some great work that's going on in work-based learning across the nation. So thank you, everyone. You are amazing. And thank you again to our presenters today.
Thanks, everybody.